Hello, everybody. Again, I am Nelson Joseph Castile, founder of Cave of Mystery. To connect with me, my ministry, the work that we're doing, caveofmystery.org. That'll show you, give you access to my books, my classes, courses. I have a few books out already. You can find them on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, so on and so forth. Fullness Guide to Sonship and Mysticism is a book that every son and mystic needs. Um, You're doing yourself a disservice without it. And coming up, I have a few courses. I have a healer course coming up and a spiritual warfare and deliverance course coming up. So if any of that interests you, check it out on my website, caveofmystery.org. Now, not to prolong this topic any further, let's get into it. Today, I want to talk to you about demonstration, right? And when I say demonstration, I'm talking about the living proof of a supernatural world or a supernatural connection. And that is one of the missing links amongst many supernatural cultures, many spiritual cultures, is the lack of demonstration, right? If we're dealing with this from a Hindu or Vedic perspective, they have what they know as siddhis, which are supernatural abilities that they get from their practices. But even in that culture, it is somewhat taboo where it's frowned upon using it because it's easy to get so caught up in the gifts and the manifestations that you lose sight of the actual journey itself, which for them is realization. But at the very least, there is some expected goal of the practice that manifests in some way, shape, or form. In the Bible, right, there's many supernatural feats that really go unnoticed. But at the very least, in the New Testament, we hear about the gifts of the Spirit. You know, you have healings and faith and miracles. You have word of wisdom, word of knowledge, prophecy, discerning of spirits, and tongues, and interpretation of tongues, being the nine main gifts of the Spirit, which are available to anyone who has received the gift that is Holy Spirit, right? The gift that keeps on giving. Now, what we fail to realize, and it's due to the way that we've structured a lot of our ministries, is that these different manifestations aren't really for us. And when I say they're not really for us, they are, especially when we're talking about the nine gifts of the Spirit, those are tools of evangelism. Those are tools of reformation. Those are tools of terraformation. And by that, those are the things that we use to prove that there is such a thing as a spirit, that there is such a thing as God. It's things that break the laws of nature, right? So when you lay hands on the sick and they recover, that proves that there's something active outside of what we conventionally know as science that gives people hope for a greater realm, right? That's proof that there's something bigger than you might have already thought. So that already gives you this idea of an importance. There's an importance to these different manifestations, not just to have them. See, the purpose of miracle signs and wonders is not really to feed the ego. That's what we're used to seeing, but the goal of it is to feed the world, is to benefit the world around us, is to be a blessing to our environment. Again, reminding ourselves that we are on an apostolic mission. That mission is to make earth look just like heaven. That takes some power, right? And truthfully, we're equipped in any area that we recognize something is on earth that we don't simultaneously find, not just in the culture of heaven, but in the laws of the heavens. We have the ability to operate from higher laws. See, in the natural world, we have this thing called city laws, and then we have county laws, and then we have state laws, and then we have federal laws. These are layers of law, and the higher it goes above the lower, right? In the similar fashion that the laws of nature do exist, right? The world operates in a particular way. It's ruled by electromagnetism. That's a whole nother session, but the world itself operates by certain laws, which means that as long as you're obeying those laws, you can't really call it supernatural. You can say that you have a greater understanding of the laws of nature, which enables you to do some things that others might not think possible, but that's just an understanding of a science, right? You're still operating within the possibilities. You're not breaking any laws. Once you get into the realm that I'm talking about, that enables us to really be able to demonstrate spiritual capabilities, you're invoking laws of a higher plane, right? The law of gravity exists as a standard in the natural world, but there's countless stories of people who, in the moment of spiritual ecstasy, break free from even the hold of gravity, right? There's people even now that what we're used to seeing is that when someone lays hands, we're used to, if there's some power moving, right? We're used to seeing people shake, they fall, they laugh, but they fall and they hit the ground. Well, there's people in the world today, and it was even more popular back then, right? Where when they lay hands on people, instead of them falling over, they lift up into the air. This is something that you read about, that you can read about extensively if you begin to study some of the Catholic saints, that levitation and flying, being free from gravity, was more popular and more common than being slain in the spirit in a traditional sense, to the point where they had special roles in their ministries, in their churches, in their cathedrals, in their temples, their monasteries, right? Where someone's job was to help get the people off of the ceiling after a certain time so that they could go back to doing their regular work. Sometimes they would have people, before they went into prayer real deep, they would have ropes tied to everyone so that it was easier to pull everyone back down. Oh yeah, that's recorded in our history books. And it's not just one time, it's super common, right? You hear about miracles, signs, and wonders. Now, mind you, supernatural healing has never stopped happening. Secessionists are just wrong. Period. There's too much happening today to believe that they ended it all. But that goes to show the backslidden nature of what we actually consider to be ministry. We've prioritized speaking engagements over a lifestyle of demonstration or a culture of demonstration, right? The world around us shouldn't know that God exists because we give a good argument. No, the world around us should know that God exists at the bare minimum because it's evident in the lives of those who claim to be believers. The Bible in the book of Mark, these signs shall follow them that believe. These signs should be following you if you believe. I don't make the rules, right? That, going back to something that I borrow from my old church, they would say, God is too big to be in you and not stick out somewhere. There must be a manifestation of, right? There must be a manifestation that proves that there is some connection between you and God, right? And sadly, we've shifted even more in modern culture where we're so focused on being the next big revelator. And we have amazing wordplay. We're great orators. We're great speakers, but there is no manifestation of the realms that we're speaking to people about, right? That's something I promise to never do. I share the stuff I do. I myself am a demonstrator. I started that way, right? Because even when I was starting out as a Christian, I don't consider myself a Christian now. I consider myself a son. I left all religion for the government of God. But even when I was a Christian, I recognized that there was an importance of being able to prove the existence of God, not through a good argument, not through a good sermon, not through the manipulation of emotions, not through guilt tripping and fear mongering, because that doesn't really cut it. That doesn't get people to actually pursue God. That doesn't actually solve the answer. That gets people to come to church, but that doesn't actually get us to a people that are actually walking as the inhabitants of God. We don't really get that way. And I remember I was inspired by one specific verse, which was John 14, 12 through 14, where he said, if you believe in me and the works that I do, those same works shall you do. And even greater works than these shall you do, because I go to the Father. That fascinated me because that broke what I was used to hearing. I grew up Baptist. I was used to hearing he's the only one that could do that. He's the only one with power. You can only do things insofar as he empowers you to do it. It's not you that does it. It's God doing it through you. And that verse pretty much spit in the face of all of that. He says, no, anything I can do, you can do. And there's actually more stuff that you can do, that you're actually called to be doing. That broke my paradigm. Right. So at that point, I had a goal. I was like, I want to experience all of the stuff that I've read about in the Bible. I'm like, if I believe that the same God that did it is still active today, and I'm worshiping the same God, I'm connected to the same God, I need to be experiencing this stuff. This has to be in my life. So I remember I was pressing in the spirit. I was like, I want to learn the science of the supernatural. I want to learn how this stuff really works. I got to have it. Right. Kind of like that. I want to say is Paul Morton, where he's like, don't do it without me. I had FOMO when it came to the supernatural. I'm like, if this stuff is available, we're living below our capacity. We're living below your offer by letting you be the only supernatural one. Right. So I begin to press in for that. And I'll tell y'all one of the keys that actually got me to start moving in the supernatural outside of the common stuff I tell y'all about. I tell y'all about my extensive prayer life. I was praying anywhere between 5 to 8 hours a day. These days it's somewhere around 3 to 4 hours a day right now, but that's only part of it, right? That just builds up energy. That doesn't really show you how to do it. That doesn't fix your mind. So one of the things that I did, and I learned this from Smith Wigglesworth's granddaughter, great granddaughter. She's still alive and in ministry herself, Lillian DeFinn. And one of the things that she shared is the importance or the power in the signature. As in, when you sign for something in the natural, that means you own it and you have it. Your signature is your ownership of a thing. So I took that same principle and I took my Bible, and anytime I saw something that I wanted to experience in my life, I signed next to it. That meant I have it. So then I started to expect those things to happen, and I started to exercise, right? Sometimes it's not a lack of anointing. It's not a lack of power. It's not a lack of authority. We've just never tried to do certain things. And I've actually received rebukes from Yeshua in the middle of me praying, asking him to launch me in the realms and give me the ability and give me certain experiences, where he'll interrupt me and say, have you even tried? So that is a major component, is that there's a lot of things we're praying for that we already have the ability to do, and we've just never tried to do it. If you try and you fail, that's one thing, but some of you have never tried in the first place. You've never tried to heal the sick, therefore you think you can. You've never tried to cast out a demon, therefore you don't think you can. You've never tried to raise the dead. You just send condolences. Therefore, we miss a lot of opportunities. So I took my Bible and I went, and anytime I saw something supernatural that I wanted to experience in my life, I put my signature next to it. So if y'all ever got a hold of one of my old Bibles, you'd see my signature all throughout it, right? And I can tell you, I've experienced all of that stuff at least one time. I've experienced it. Doesn't mean I've mastered it, but I experienced it at least once. Now, there's certain things that I actually begin to incorporate into my life. Because truth be told, I got more out of my intimacy with God than I actually bargained for. When I started out, it's few supernatural manifestations I actually wanted. Because my frame of reference was small. I had a lack of inspiration. I didn't know that certain things were possible. So I wanted the bare minimum. I was like, and I'm just being honest, I was like, I want to be able to prophesy accurately. I want to be able to heal the sick, cast out devils, and people fall when I lay hands on them. That's all I want. No, God, the royal family had more in store for me, right? So now, not only am I teaching people that stuff, but I'm having experiences in the heavens, cloud of witnesses walking around in my home. I have 7 spirits manifesting around. I got, right? Talk about some of the supernatural occurrences I've experienced in my own life. For about 2.5, almost 3 years straight, I had a hammock instead of a bed. I got rid of my bed and replaced it with a hammock. So I would lay back in my hammock and look at the ceiling while I was praying. And pretty much every day I'd watch as the presence got so dense on my ceiling that it formed into a storm cloud. And you can kind of see electricity crackling across my ceiling. And I saw that every day. I had experiences where I'd go days and weeks and months with no sleep just because of how much energy I had. the level of prophetic accuracy I begin to see in the spirit. All that stuff I started to experience just because I prioritized it and I didn't exclude myself from it. So what if I told you that the reason you're not demonstrating is because you don't think you can, but you actually can? What if I told you that the reason you're not demonstrating is because you don't think it's your responsibility to? You still see yourself as a puppet meant to be used by the Spirit rather than someone with a free will who's been commissioned to go and do works, right? Once you take responsibility for your role in going out and demonstrating the kingdom to the world, you stop looking for permission in certain areas and recognize a commissioning. See, we'll receive a great commissioning enough to have revival at church, but we won't receive that great commissioning to go out into the world like they did and do the same works that they did, right? One of the questions that I hear people ask, almost as a gotcha moment for all of us that move in healing, they're like, well, how come y'all don't go to the hospitals? I'll tell you this. I've met and I've healed more people out in the streets than I could actually get a hold of in hospitals. Working in hospitals is hard. So many rules, so many protocols. You got to deal with nurses. You got to deal with doctors. It gets complicated sometimes. But can you believe that there's more hurting people just out in the streets, out and about where you already are, that need some help? You know, we in the States, healthcare isn't free out here. Some people just thug it out and don't go to the hospital. Right? There are some people that do go to the hospitals. They don't get famous for it though, because the doctors take all the credit for their work. I know, because the doctors have taken a lot of credit for a lot of the work I've done in hospitals when I was going. They'd be on their deathbed. I go in, pray they get well. The doctor said, even the person, they're like, oh, thank you, Dr. Such and such. I'm like, well, I could have kept my prayer if you're going to give it all to the doctor, you know, just thinking out loud. But there's people around you every day that need an experience just to inspire them. The problem with the world isn't a lack of preaching. We've heard all the sermons. We don't need any more, to be honest, right? We've got enough sermons. We need a culture of demonstration. Don't you find it odd that when Yeshua commissioned his disciples, his followers, he sent them out to demonstrate his works? But for some reason in the modern day, you go to church and you don't actually expect to see any of those same works. That's not an expectation, right? If you see someone healed in a church service, you consider that a random act of God. That's not normal. God really moved today. That's something abnormal to you. It shouldn't be, right? You expect to hear a sermon. You expect to experience a concert. You expect for offering to get passed, but you don't necessarily expect for healing, deliverance. You don't actually expect for an encounter that actually proves the existence of God to you. Not really. The rest of that stuff, the gifts and manifestation, that's icing on the cake. That shows our culture is backslidden. We should expect moves of the Spirit more than we expect the song, whether it's fast or slow, and more than we expect the sermon, right? Sometimes I've hosted meetings where there was no music. Matter of fact, just a few weeks ago when I had my ministry anniversary last month, I didn't have any music there because it's not the point. People got an encounter, which is why for 14 days straight, I had miracles, testimony after testimony after testimony after testimony, breakthrough after breakthrough, healing after healing off of one meeting, because I made a demand that there would be miracles, signs, and wonders in all of my meetings. Not just in my meetings, but anywhere that I go. That's just a part of my life. Like Jacqueline Carr said, everything attached to me, right? So that again shows the backslid nature, because as I'm talking about this stuff, some of you are like, oh wow, this is cool, or some of you are like, oh, he making this up. Hey, I welcome you to come to any of my meetings. If you think I'm making this up, come to any of my meetings. I can show you better than I could tell you, and that's kind of the point, right? I got out of, when I was a Christian, I followed the patterns that most Christians did. I thought that arguments was going to get this stuff done. So one of the things that I did when I was starting out as a Christian, I was heavily into apologetics. I was on the internet arguing with atheists, arguing with people who live lifestyles I didn't like. I was arguing with everybody as if that was going to get something done. And there came a point where I was really good at arguing. I was winning all my debates, but nothing was changing in the lives of those other people. It was like, yeah, you won the argument, but they don't care. They go back to their normal life. So I'm like, okay, something needs to change. So I made a decision as a high schooler, because I started while I was in high school. I was like, I'm going to just start to demonstrate the supernatural, because that at least proves the existence of the spirit. We can negotiate and I can argue and convince them how much that spirit loves them, how much God loves them, and their identity in this later. But at least the fact that God exists, that the supernatural is real, because I would show them videos of other ministers. They're like, oh, that guy's fake. Maybe he paid them to just say they got healed. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. So I started demonstrating. So I remember I would be in high school and I would talk to people and they're like, I don't believe in God. I'm like, oh, no problem. I could prove it. They're like, how you going to prove it? I'd have them stand far away from me. I'm like, how do you feel? They're like, I feel good right now. I feel okay. I feel normal. I'm like, how does the room feel? They're like, it's cold in here because, we in school. AC is blasting. And I remember I would stretch my hand out towards them and their whole body would get hot. They're like, whoa, what is that? I'm like, that would be Holy Spirit. So now we have a different conversation. It's no longer me trying to convince them that God exists. Now it's me convincing them that they're loved by God, that they have a divine family. Now the conversation changes. Now I'm actually trying to get them into intimacy, which was also different. I didn't try to get people to come to my church because that's not really the point. The point isn't which building you get people to come to. Truthfully, the buildings don't matter. It's about the actual spiritual identity and the intimacy we have with Elohim or the Netzeru, whichever word you want to use, right? Our divine intimacy is what matters most. So that's what I started doing. I was like, oh, I can show you better than I could tell you. I would talk to atheists at my school or people who grew up Christian but didn't actually believe in nothing, because that's what you do. You're in the South. We're in the Bible Belt. All of us grew up going to church for the most part. But that back to the cultural issue, we weren't used to seeing anything supernatural. So what happens is people, they're sick, they're hurt, whatever it is. I'm asking them, hey, can I pray for you? They're like, oh, I don't believe in that. I'm like, I didn't ask you if you believed. I asked you if you let me do it. They're like, sure, why not? I do it. It works. Now we have a different conversation, right? What if I told you you don't have to preach as hard? You don't have to be as rude. You don't have to be as pushy. If you would simply demonstrate, most people are looking for a reason to believe, and you haven't given them one. You've given them good arguments. You've gone back and forth. You've shunned them. You've embraced them. But what you have not done is given them proof that something out of the ordinary exists. Like I was talking to one sister, and I agree with her. A lot of the testimonies that y'all tell are normal circumstances. You mean you prayed and then went to the doctor and had the regular surgery that doctor went to school to learn how to perform, and you are recovering at a normal human rate, and you call that a testimony? No, that is the normal. That's normal, right? There's nothing supernatural about that. You can be thankful that you're fine, but that's not a testimony. That's normal, right? If people can get the same result as you, or even better, without your God, stop considering it a testimony, right? If they're matching you without your divine help, it's not really a testimony, right? So I had a different hunger. I still have a different hunger. I'm like, I need a level of the supernatural that enables me to demonstrate beyond my skeptics, right? I'll take a page from y'all, right? There comes this moment in the book of Exodus, right? Moses goes in to contend with the Pharaoh. He goes in, and long story short, Pharaoh's magicians can do just about everything Moses can do. There comes a point where they can no longer keep up. That's what I'm after. And that's what I actually believe us as sons should actually be after. A level of spirituality where the arguments die. There is no more competition at that realm. That's what I'm after, where there is no more debate. What are we debating about, right? It's just evident. There came a point during the story of Exodus, there wasn't a debate to be had with Moses. He was leagues and bounds in magnitude above what the others were able to produce. Right now, we're not experiencing that. You have prophets competing with and borrowing from psychics that they claim are witches, but they're operating on a similar dimension, prophesying at the same level, foretelling at the same level, and sometimes worse, because guess what? Witches don't get their prophecies wrong, but prophets do. Something's wrong with that. Hey, right? A psychic gets on TV, says X, Y, and Z is going to happen. It doesn't. They're done. That's the end of their business. But in Christianity, you restore the prophets and they back to lie again the next time. Takes a moment, right? Takes a culture where we're actually all hungry to actually do the things of God. So where is the lack of hunger? It's the fact that what we consider ministry, I don't, so I won't say me, I'll say y'all. What y'all consider ministry doesn't involve your demonstration. You still think that your sermon is that important. You still think that regular Sunday meetings with the music and all that, so you still think that's important. No, that's optional. That's the unimportant stuff. The important stuff is that you demonstrate. The important stuff is that you take the culture of the heavens and manifest that on the earth. That's the important stuff, right? We're talking about the works of Christ. You know, you need to be doing, look, there's two levels to this, right? John 14:12. If you believe in me and the works that I do, those same works shall you do. You can do everything he did. If you believe he did it, you can do it. Let's start there. And then we'll work on greater works. Because guess what? I had and I have a frustration with other sons and other mystics who've considered themselves too mature and too beyond on a whole nother level to where they've become inactive. They don't do nothing no more. Everything is beneath them. That's a deception. To be anointed and inactive. I believe it was Reinhard Bonnke that talked about people being anointed couch potatoes. Right? The world needs our demonstration. So I had some frustration with other mystics where I'm talking to them and I stick out like a celebrity when I shouldn't, because I'm out here healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out devils. They're like, oh, that's cool. How did you do this? I'm like, why am I sticking out amongst people who are also having the same face-to-face relationship why aren't you active? They're like, oh, that's under the sun. We don't really have, that's church age. I'm like, church age? No. There never was a church age. I did another video on that. There never was a church age. It's only kingdom, right? These are kingdom expressions. On earth as it is in heaven is our assignment until it's finished. And then that's just life. Right? So I think about the people who were actually able to shape the world around them. Like, as much as people hate Benny Hinn, he's in a state right now where his level of demonstration has gotten him to a point where politicians are coming to his meetings to receive their healing, and they're getting their healing. Right? If it's random nobodies, you can lie and say he's paying people, but he's paying entire governments to come. Yeah. No. No. Mind you, Benny Hinn's my grandpa. He mentored my mentor. But that's just an example. He functioned at a level of demonstration that went beyond skepticism. So now they don't really attack his miracles anymore. What they attack is his personality. They're like, oh, he's too flashy. He got too much money, because that's all they got. But I think about the other people, right? I've studied mystics and mysticism, sons of old and present. That's what I do. Matter of fact, every September is a holiday, Mystic History Month. If you're on Facebook, Hashtag Mystic History Month. It'll bring up all the articles I've written over the years on different mystics and their contributions, right? And something that I noticed, the reason that we know those people's names is because they dared to step out of the ordinary, because their normal was different than everyone else's normal, right? And at a certain point, I got tired of hearing those old stories. I had a greater desire to experience that stuff than I had to want to just sit and wonder and hope and beg that God would move in that same vein again, right? I don't want to beg for Azusa. I'd rather just have Azusa, right? And I know the story, right? When it comes to Azusa, for those of you who don't know, there was a revival that started in California. It was doomed to fail from the start. It was supposed to be the entire city of Houston, but they had such a manifestation of the spirit that the building sometimes would look like it was on fire, and they would have to call the fire department. That's just because the presence was so dense that it actually looked like it was on fire. The presence was so powerful outside that walking up to the house, people would get slain in the spirit in the streets. People were getting healed of all types of stuff. You have people like Jack Coe. Jack Coe was healing his congressmen, right? The congressmen of his day were getting healed in his meetings. Talk about not paying people. But you have a level of demonstration where your government knows that they can come to you for help, not the other way around. We had that less than 100 years ago. The question is, where'd it go? Leisure made us lazy. You have Catherine Kuhlman, won a Nobel Peace Prize. She would set up shop and just do miracles every day, just because she knew how to host a presence that enabled the miracles. Lady would transfigure in front of people. Matter of fact, I'll tell y'all a little bit of history. I'm the reason that the picture of her where she's transfigured with the thunder and lightning in the room, because that would also happen. Sometimes electricity would actually manifest in the room. I'm the reason that picture got popularized. But that's why Catherine Kuhlman had her foot on that generation, is because she was. Did you know that during that time, doctors would actually prescribe people to just go to her meeting instead of giving them medicine? They would say, just go to a Catherine Kuhlman meeting. They would write that on the prescription and they would get healed. She would challenge all the doctors in the room and say, hey, if you want to make sure you want to verify any of these miracles, you're welcome to come up on the stage. It wasn't fake. Those arguments came later, but no, doctors were there. They were trained. They came in there. She was legit. Again, they prescribed for people to go there. A level of demonstration that ends up being a commodity. Right? What reason does the government have to seek your help? Why would the government come looking for you specifically? Do you have anything of value? Right? Your governor is sick. Does your governor know that they can come to you for help? Amy Semple McPherson, she had a day where she used to, it was called Stretcher Day, where the only way you got in is if you were on a stretcher or you were with someone that was on a stretcher. And she ministered to people on stretchers all day long, and they all got healed. Is your ministry doing stretcher day, wheelchair day, crutches day, right? No, y'all gonna pass that offering bucket. Anyway, right? No, you know, you have to be of actual service. I think we forgot what this was supposed to be about. Right? We have people that were actually benefiting their regions, which is why they made a mark on history. We're not benefiting our regions. A lot of us are preying on our regions and hoping God blesses us to prey on more people. Nah, that's why I don't do ministry the way other people do it, because to be honest, a lot of that stuff disgusts me. Demonstration is necessary. Again, I want to speak to the sloth. I want to speak to the pride. If you consider yourself a son, you're not beyond healing other people, right? That's something I would hear a lot. They're like, oh, they just need to do it themselves. I'm like, I do believe in that as a progression, right? Heal them one time, heal them two times. Third time, you need to figure that out. You should have learned by now, right? I'm not against maturity, but you mean a year went by and you haven't healed anybody? A decade went by, you have cast out 0 devils. Right. But y'all always talking about y'all under attack. Attack from what? You're not doing anything. What reason does this enemy have to come bother you if you're entirely inactive? Oh no, you are a greeter at the door of the church. That's it. They can grab their own water without you. They can find the restaurant. You know, what reason do you have to be considered under attack? They can set up chairs without you. Come on now. Now, once you start building up momentum, yeah, there comes some challenges. There comes some offense. You got to learn how to press through. That's what happened to me, right? Speaking from my own experience, when I decided I wanted to learn how to operate in the supernatural, the culture that once embraced me rejected me because I was moving outside of their comfort zone. So it registered as 2 things. They're like, well, he's over there in that other stuff. Other thing is, I was younger than all of them. So in a way, it was, we can't inspire him to do something that we're not doing. Again, I had to teach myself how to move in the spirit. Holy Spirit taught me this stuff. The cloud of witnesses and 7 spirits taught me this stuff. I didn't get it from a book. I wrote the book, right? Fullness Guide to Sonship and Mysticism. By the time I found other books about the supernatural, I was already walking in it. Right? I remember I forget the name of the book. I let someone borrow it years ago. They never gave it back, but it didn't matter. It was a book by Guillermo Maldonado, and it was about how to walk in the spirit. And I read that whole book. I was like, well, this is what I do right now. This is just what I do for a living. So I guess I'm just on the right track. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I stopped buying books. I was like, okay, more of this is what we need. So a lot of things that y'all are experiencing that y'all consider warfare and y'all are considering attacks is just your own lack of depth. You're not moving at a magnitude that makes those other things an impossibility. And instead of taking responsibility, you'd rather believe that the enemy is attacking you. You've recommissioned someone that's supposed to be defeated already. Oh my. So yes, when it comes to doing the works of Christ, you don't necessarily need to receive a special anointing. A lot of stuff can be done just by faith, just by magnitude of the Spirit. Which way is this hat supposed to be? I feel like T.I. It was leaning to the side a little bit. All right, so yeah, demonstration is necessary. That's part of the culture. If you consider yourself a son, you consider yourself a mystic, you consider yourself a child of God, a believer, any of these words, you consider yourself anointed, please demonstrate. Please make a culture of demonstration, especially fivefold people. You consider yourself apostles and prophets and pastors and even the deacons, right? Well, when I read the Bible, the deacons were overflowing. I grew up in a church where the deacons were alcoholics that was cheating on their wives and stuff. Different standard of deaconhood. Different standards, right? Paul said this thing where he was like, I heard some guys that claim that they're apostles. I'm going to go see. And the way that he went to go see was through demonstration of spirit and power. He went to see if they had the power to back up the title that they were claiming. Not none of this passive aggressive, oh, the real ones don't use a title nonsense. No. Paul said, I ain't got no problem with y'all being apostles. You need to do the work, though. So let's see. Right? One of the other stories I wanted to bring up, you have John G. Lake, right? He prayed and asked to learn the science of healing. In the same way, I prayed and learned the science of the supernatural. He understood healing to such a degree that the city that he was in was declared the healthiest city in the world. That was Spokane, Washington. And at the time that he was active, all the hospitals shut down because they would rather come to what he had as healing rooms. Not just that, John G. Lake would drive around and he would even set up shop sometime. He would just set up a tent. He'd set up a stage somewhere and challenge the audience. He'd say, I have $500 for anyone who's injured, and I pray for you and you don't get healed. If you don't get healed, I give you all $500. I'll pay for you. He kept his money every time. Everyone he prayed for got healed because he understood the science. Wasn't none of this, oh, God, if it be your will, heal. No, that's a lack of responsibility. You're going to kill them people every time praying like that. It's not about words. It's about knowing the science of the spirit, knowing the science of the supernatural. He kept his money every time. How many of you can be honest and say you lose your money? You set up shop today and say, hey, if anyone doesn't get healed, I'll give you $1,000. How many of you have just gotten out of $1,000? Be honest. John G. Lake had that. We need that again. We need people that understand the ways of the spirit to the point where the world knows that they can depend on us, who are supposed to be the emissaries of the divine. See, we want to carry the status of the children of God without any of the responsibilities as the sons of God. Everybody want to be a son till it's time to do son work. Everybody want to be anointed till it's time to do Christ work. Everybody want to be apostolic till it's time to make earth look like heaven. Y'all don't really like doing the work. Y'all like preaching. Like I said, I'll put all these sermons down. Let's just demonstrate. That's why I like people like William Branham. He didn't preach a lot. Earliest parts of he let somebody else preach. He'd come out, do the miracles, and go home for the night. Let's get back to that, where the world can actually depend on us. Are your congressmen coming to you, looking for you to see if you can heal them? Your governors come and find you, hey, this ministry here moves in the supernatural. We need their help. Nah, we don't have that. We got prophets that get on TV and prophesy wrong in front of the whole world and embarrass the rest of it. That's what we get. Make all of us look bad. I'm telling you, if you haven't already, on Facebook, #Mystic History Month, you'll find all of the articles I wrote. Be inspired, because that's the other thing. Not only are these things beneficial for who we consider, or who you might consider non-believers, pre-believers, whatever term you want to use for the people, right? And it's just a consideration, right? For all those people, it's not just for them. It's not just for the quote-unquote lost. It's for the people that think they're found too. We need inspiration, right? Sometimes we need to see that stuff happen in front of us. When's the last time you've seen the presence of God manifest in such a way that people couldn't move in the room? Right? My brother, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, he went viral recently for telling the story. He said, there's certain things I don't tell y'all because I know y'all can't handle it. He was saying, before I ever went to Bible school, I was praying in the spirit so much, I flew every day, where my body would literally lift up off the ground. I'd move around my house. Now he going viral for that. A lot of people have those experiences. We just don't talk about them because we scared of each other. We need to make that stuff normal again. I remember someone asked, what would be the purpose of something like that? The demonstration, the inspiration alone, right? Seeing the supernatural regularly in front of you. If you're like me, at least, it makes you want more. It makes you hungrier. Reading stories about Apostle Joseph Ao Babalola and how he was able to ring a bell and cast demons out of a city. Oh, that inspired me. I'm like, I have a city. I haven't rung a bell and all the demons left it. I ain't did that one yet. That's different. That's a different magnitude. Where he actually could call down fire, and they have pictures of the tree on fire that he called fire down from heaven on. You have people like Daniel Orokoya, who couldn't pray in tongues around people because whenever he did, thunder and lightning started to strike around him, and he feared. Oh. See, we like preaching about these people. We don't actually like doing this type of stuff. That's the purpose of it, right? The inspiration. The job of inspiration is to inspire you. The job of a testimony is to give you inspiration. That inspiration inspires you. It provokes you to act and to become. You start to see yourself as a possibility. See, believing that it can happen somewhere off and somebody might be able to do it ain't good enough. You got to start having some self-esteem and believing that you can actually move in things of the spirit. Which also means you got to stop entertaining the theologies and philosophies of people who have no works. He said, if you don't believe my works, if you don't believe my words, believe my works. Y'all ain't got no works. Y'all have to make people believe y'all word. We got to move past that. We got to have works again. Work so great that you don't have to have words. Y'all speak against the Hindus. Hey, Sadhguru is out miracle, sign, and wonder in y'all, and he don't even like those. He's giving people breakthrough that they didn't get when they was going to church with y'all. They're like, oh no, that's a different system. Maybe, maybe not. Out demonstrate them. Everyone walks into that room, feels a charge that changes their life. You do that. And do it better than him. Then y'all can argue. But right now, he outperforming y'all. And I say y'all because I'm a demonstrator myself. So let's see. Let me see if any of y'all have any questions or comments. Let's see. All right. See Apostle Serge and Margie. I'm doing a conference with them. I'm being in Florida this October. If any of y'all are in the Fort Lauderdale, be in Fort Lauderdale this October. Me and Apostle Serge are going to collab soon and talk about that on video for y'all. But we're doing a conference talking about immortality. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. All right. So that's the thing, right? We got to get these stories out of the past. We don't need them in the past. They don't do much for us other than inspire. The purpose of a testimony isn't for you to just go, wow, that was cool. No, that's supposed to become normal. That's supposed to be a lifestyle. This is what we do. So I'm grateful to have friends that are also demonstrators, that when I talk to them about some of the things I experienced, they've experienced it too. I was talking to an apostle today. Me and Apostle Serge were talking. I was telling him about the thunderclouds that would form on my ceiling. He said, yeah, the same thing was happening to me. I would just pray and you see the electricity moving around, like somebody gets me, because that's normal for me. I talk about that in public. I look special. Either I look crazy or I look like a superstar, and I don't like either one of those. I want it to be normal. So when you hear different things in the spirit, get out of the mindset of going, oh, I want them to lay hands on me. No, get the hunger for that thing and you'll get it. Get the hunger. We're not hungry enough in the spirit corporately enough. And that's why we're being out miracle signs and wonders. That's why y'all still scared of witches, because the witches are more dedicated. Bible says that obedience is better than sacrifice. Well, they're more obedient and their sacrifice outweighs your level of obedience. They're active, you're not. Kind of like a joke that I see all the time where people are like, yeah, my light bill got cut off. The devil surely is busy. They say, yeah, that's the problem. He working and you not. There comes a point where you shouldn't be scared of witches. There comes a point where you shouldn't be under attack, quote unquote, all the time. There comes a point where you should be the source of power in every room you walk in, where you go in as a giver, not as a receiver. What does the world need? Right? You're so familiar with the heavens that you can compare it and say, okay, the earth is missing this, and I have the ability to put it there. Y'all will get it one day. Y'all will get it one day. But I did mention a little bit about the warfare thing. Again, I have a course coming up, Spiritual Warfare and Deliverance. It's a free course. It's 7 weeks. Teaching you the ins and outs of spiritual warfare and deliverance from a sonship perspective, teaching you how to cast out demons. What are demons? How to defend yourself against witchcraft. What is witchcraft? What are the open doorways to the demonic? Offense and defense. Teach you all of that. It's free. Also, I got my healers course coming up. For those of you who are tired of being powerless, tired of feeling helpless when it comes to those types of situations, you want to heal yourself. You want to heal other people. You want to stay immune so you never have to be healed again. Right? Because guess what? You being in and out of the hospital is not a testimony. That is embarrassing from the standpoint of a believer. That's embarrassing. No, you never being sick, you never being hurt, you never being infirm. It's actually your portion, right? You being infirmed and still making your way to church is not a testimony. Your church attendance is not that important to the heavens. I promise you it's not. That matters to your pastor and maybe to you if you are the pastor, but that stuff don't matter to the heavens. They don't care about that. So if you're tired of being sick, you want your last sick day to be your last sick day. You have something, you want to get rid of it. You want to learn how to heal other people. You're tired of people dying on you. Take my course. Some of my students that took the last course, I've already started coming in with testimonies. Even through the course, people were already getting healed just by implementing some of the stuff I shared early on. Because it's not about giving you this one secret trick. It's about giving you a lifestyle that produces results. And that's sadly what we miss a lot in sonship, in mysticism, in the kingdom, is that y'all don't let this stuff be a lifestyle for y'all. You try to get this one thing. You want prayer one time to fix it, but not a lifestyle that keeps you out of it to begin with. Lifestyle is kingdom, lifestyle, sonship, journey. There are no off days. I don't get to be a son today and not a son tomorrow. I'm not apostle today, not anymore. I'm not just in this when I'm on camera. I hate being on camera. I'd rather be in prayer. Yeah, this is a lifestyle. So in both of those courses, I give you keys to actually have a lifestyle. Also in my book, Fullness Guide to Sonship and Mysticism, I give you all the keys necessary to build a lifestyle that actually feeds your sonship, that feeds your lifestyle as a mystic, that gives you everything that you need to actually be who you were called to be or who you actually are in eternity. So that's really it for this session. Hopefully something was said that inspired you to actually go out and do more. And my prayer for you is that you desire a greater hunger for the things of God, for the supernatural, and you have a drive to go out and demonstrate. May your compassion grow to the point where you care enough about your region, care enough about your surroundings to introduce them to the spiritual reality that you have access to. And that's it, y'all. Y'all be blessed. I love y'all. Later.